What do you think's more tough, your job and all the problems you have to go to tomorrow, or try going undercover and trying to successfully infiltrate an organized crime crew? Hey there, welcome to another edition of the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host Mike, and I'm really excited to be talking to you today about Donnie Brasco. This is a really interesting mafia-related movie, and it's a true story. It's actually one that I did not see for a long time. I actually just saw it for the first time last year, and it's rather surprising since I really do love this genre. To be quite honest, it's a story I always wanted to learn more about, but the reason I never watched the movie is because Johnny Depp is actually the lead, and I couldn't picture him as an Italian gangster, or at least pretending to be an Italian gangster, but I was completely wrong. He did a great job in the film. For those who don't know anything about Donnie Brasco, and this will be a spoiler-free review, if you have not seen the movie, I won't spoil anything, but for those who have not seen Donnie Brasco, it is about the undercover agent. His name was Joe Pistone, but he created an alias character named Donnie Brasco to try to trick the mafia that he was a guy off the streets who wanted to join them. And during this time, he learned a ton about the mafia, how it worked. Now, a little bit of background. At this time in the country, the mafia was still very powerful. RICO Acts had just been passed earlier in the 70s. I actually believe it was 1970. And the attorneys and the FBI didn't know how to really use it. Part of a RICO Act is proving that the criminal organization exists in order to incriminate people. And so this was the first time to really try to prove the existence using the RICO Act. And through this film, you can see how Donnie Brasco is able to figure these things out, and you learn a lot about the life. Now, this is a terrific film. I really wish I would have watched it earlier in my life. I've been missing out. This was a good mafia movie. It was not necessarily quite as thrilling or fun as a Goodfellas type of movie, but this is a really interesting film. There's a lot of great acting. So let's just kind of get started. So Donnie Brasco is played by Johnny Depp, and he's terrific in this role. And through his character, you get to see not only the evilness of the mafia, but you also get to see how living this double life impacts him and his family, because the mafia doesn't know that he is actually Joe Pistone, and he has a wife and a couple kids, and this whole time over the 6 years, he has to try to balance the two without ever letting the mafia know he's got this family. He's pretending to be single the whole time. Another great performance is Al Pacino. Al Pacino plays Lefty, and Lefty is a really cool character because he's as badass of a gangster as they come. He brags about how many people he's killed to Donnie Brasco when they first meet, and what a tough guy he is, and the types of things you have to do in order to live that lifestyle. And he is so believable. Honestly, this is either my second favorite Al Pacino role that he's ever played, or my favorite even over The Godfather. I think he's so good at Lefty. He's so believable. I've actually heard reviews from real life ex-mobsters who say he nailed Lefty to a T, and he does such a good job. Now, through these two characters, you see the evilness of the mafia lifestyle. Lefty explains how you're on call 24/7 for the mafia. You have to swear allegiance to them over all other things. And he even talks about how if you break the rules, and he goes over all the different rules of the mafia, your penalty is you die. And when you die, you get walked into a room, and somebody that you've known maybe your whole life is the one that helps murder you. And that's the evilness of this lifestyle. People are murdered, and it's sometimes your friends that are the ones throwing you under the bus. He also even gets into some of the politics and how even when guys don't break the rules, sometimes to move up and get power, they're fighting with each other. And it's just a very evil lifestyle. And there's also a gang war in this film that they're kind of in the middle of. It's not as thrilling of a gang war as maybe The Godfather or even some fictional movies like The Departed or something, but it's a really interesting, true mafia-related war that they're kind of a part of during this film over the course of their 6 years together. The other really interesting thing about this is you see how Joe Pistone is completely destroying his family as he goes undercover. He's missing really big events for his kids. because he's on call 24/7. He goes sometimes weeks without seeing his family, I think even months at one point in the movie. And what the guy did to sacrifice to really infiltrate this crew of gangsters, he really sacrificed a lot in order to do this correctly. The other thing you really see too through Lefty is you see a lot of these mafia guys, you know, they're doing crime and they're bad things, but they weren't necessarily bad guys. They just were kind of normal guys who happened to do crime for a living, as crazy as that sounds. And you really see that with Lefty and his family. You know, he's really loving towards his wife. There's a great scene where Donnie Brasco goes to his house for one of the holidays and he's cooking and he's having banter with his wife. But you also see that he's got all these problems with his son, and, you know, he feels powerless to help his son through some of the issues that he's going through. You know, it's just like everyday kind of things that anybody would kind of live through, even in a normal life, or any father would kind of deal with. Things that scare everybody as a father, that to watch their kids go through, and this big bad gangster is powerless to go through it. They immediately develop this friendship. It's very clear Lefty likes Donnie Brasco from the beginning, after fooling him that he is a jeweler and some kind of expert jeweler who can spot fake diamonds. And, you know, they're using Italian terms and language when they're going through that whole process, which is just hilarious. The family's actually going through a power transition. Someone's been murdered. And so one of Lefty's associates, this character named Sonny Black, is promoted to a position called a captain. So now Lefty is under him, and so is Donnie Brasco. And he has a little bit of a family feud with another character named Sonny Red. It's not super thrilling as far as a rivalry goes, and not some big political chess match like in some other gangster films, but it's still pretty entertaining. And you know, it's around a lot of the film's tension and a lot of the issues that are going on in the movie. Additionally, what you're seeing too is how the mob lifestyle, it's just so corrupt and not a good lifestyle for people to live. You swear your allegiance to this organization above all other things. It comes before your family and anyone important in your life, and really even before God, though even they don't really get into that too much in the movie. And as a result, you're supposed to follow these rules. And Lefty does a really good job of breaking down to Don what the rules are and explaining if you break the rules, what happens is your best friend you probably known your whole life walks you in a room and you're killed. You're murdered if you break the rules, even if they're by accident. So there's no room for error really in that lifestyle. And when you think about your family isn't a priority, your friends will turn on you that you've known your whole life and murder you. You know, that's where the real evilness comes. And you see also the horrific things that Donnie has to go through, or Joe Pistone, just to keep his cover, because Joe Pistone's under constant pressure that if he screws up, he's going to be murdered. And these guys will. They'll cut him up into little pieces and they'll throw him in the ocean. And he really knows that and feels that the whole time. And, you know, he's wearing a wire during most of the movie. So he's under a lot of stress. It's a really interesting thing to witness when you're watching the movie. And as the movie goes on, you know, and Donnie Brasco is getting more and more evidence, and he's getting ready to try to submit the evidence and finish his case, he's kind of torn because he doesn't want to see these guys go to jail. And he also knows if their bosses find out that he let a undercover agent into the mafia, Lefty is going to be murdered. Same with Sonny, you know, and it's not something he necessarily wants to see happen. So, and normally you'd think you wouldn't feel so bad for, again, a guy that's murdered over 20 people, but as the film goes on, you get so attached to these characters and you just don't want to see anything happen to them. But at the same time, you also don't want to see anything happen to Joe Pistone. It's a really interesting film. It's really interesting how it all comes together, and I think a terrific history lesson for anyone that wants to learn a little bit more about the mafia, and particularly that time period, because that was sort of the end of the golden age of the mafia. You know, by the mid 80s, the five families have become discovered, indictments were going down, and this is like right before all that happened. So I highly recommend you checking out this movie. Now, as far as rankings go, I would give this movie a 4 out of 5. It's a really good film. It's not quite there with a Goodfellas or a Godfather, but I would call it a classic. I call it definitely must see for the mafia genre. As far as the fun meter goes, I give it about a 3.5. You know, it's got some great moments, great dialogue, but it doesn't necessarily have the same level of tension between like gangs and the politics that go into that as much as some other films. And also, you don't necessarily leave the movie feeling great about everything that's going on. Now, it also does, I do want to say, take some dramatic liberties and changes a few things in the story. They're not too big, but I looked them up, and you know, it is a little bit different, particularly some of the things that happen at the end, but I still highly recommend it. It's a pretty authentic film overall, but go check it out. Those are my rankings. You know, thank you again for tuning into this episode of the Sunday Scaries. And please tune in next Sunday to check out the next episode, which will be a movie review. And, you know, if you're still down on going to work tomorrow, all I know is at least I don't got to go infiltrate the mafia tomorrow.